comparing data displays in box plots. So now we're going to look at box plots, and we're still looking at comparing, big word right over here. So having more than one box plot and then comparing what we're seeing in those two box plots. So first, you want to remember how you read the information off of a box plot, and I think I included this in your notes, but remember when you have your box plot, this just starting with the line out here goes to your lowest value. Okay, so this lowest value, and this is probably, I don't know, around 7 or so for this box plot right over here. This next spot, this is where the quartiles start. So this is where kind of the first quartile is. I'd say this one's around maybe 23, 22 or 23. We'll put 20, maybe 22.5 to start with here. But that's where that first quartile is. Very important right here, the line inside of the box, hopefully you remember this, but the line inside of the box represents the median. That's the middle of the data. For this one, it's probably around 26, 27 right over here. The line right here is where the third quartile starts. It shows the upper quartile, so that's probably around, I don't know, maybe 38 or so. And then the whisker or the line ends over here. It's a little bit before. Let me see. Is that right at 45? And we'll call it 45. Basically ends at 45. So that's where my data ends. My data ends at 45. It begins at 7. The median's about here, and this is where the quartiles are. So you want to make sure you remember that. Interquartile range also is the difference between this and this. So if this was 38, and this was, if I just said this was 22 instead of 22.5, if I subtracted them right over here, 16 would be the interquartile range. So just remembering how to find these with a box plot. Now let's talk about comparing them. So we have two box plots. And like we've done with dot plots, we can compare the shape, center, and spread. It says the box plots show the distribution of weights in pounds of two different groups of football players. Compare the shape, center, and spreads of the box plots. Okay, well, let's look at the shape first. The shape is basically just how is the data arranged. I would say that here the shapes are pretty similar. They kind of have they look fairly similar. Group B is slightly shorter. So I could say that the shapes are similar. And I'll put a second sentence. Group B, sorry, not incredibly neat here, harder to write with this program. Group B is slightly shorter, and I'm saying that for the data right over. The data here only goes from here to here, which is a little bit shorter than Group A is right there. So that's kind of how we'll look at our shape. I'm sorry. Let's look at the center. How are this organized? Well, look at the medians. That's easy right here. This line inside is what we're going to look at when we want the center of a box plot. Well, if you look at A, Group A has a median that's a little bit less than 260, and then B has a median though that's a little bit greater than 270. So Group B has a higher or greater, we could put either one of those, higher median. So even though these are kind of similar, Group B had a shorter basically shape, but it has a higher median number. Finally, the spread. So how's the data spread out? What's the range? What's the IQR? You could include the range. You can also include IQR, which is the interquartile range, which was on this one. Sorry, I'll come back to that. But that's where we subtracted this. That's where we subtracted this value from that value when we found the IQR. So if I go back to this spread. So what's the spread look like here? Well, I'd say that Group A, so let's switch, let's write in the, let's go with the red here. So Group A has a larger range. What did I just do? Range. And it has a slightly larger IQR, so I'll put that too. And interquartile range, IQR. Now, additionally, one thing you might look at, and I've seen this like in word problems, this is a shorter quartile box right over here. So you could say that remember, quartiles and interquartile ranges, when you have a box plot, remember 25% of the data is in each section of these things. That's why they call them quartiles. So in each section of your box plot, sorry I said things, but I meant section, you have 25% there, 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 and there. Same thing there, 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 and there. So when you have a shorter box right over here, that means that your data was more concentrated. If this was 25% and this is 25%, 50% of your data was more concentrated. Those numbers were closer together. In this one at the top, in group A, the data was a little bit more spread out. So that's why it had a larger range and a larger IQR. So this is how you'll compare the data distributions in box plots.